The last thing I remember clearly before everything fell apart was sitting on my bathroom floor with a needle in my arm, thinking, this time might actually be it. And I didn't care. That's the part that should terrify people, but it didn't terrify me. I just felt this strange kind of peace about it, the way someone might feel when they've been running for a long time and they finally just stop and sit down. I was done. I had been done for a while. I just didn't know what done was going to look like until I woke up somewhere else entirely. My name is Betty, and I've been a lot of things in my life that I am not proud of. I was a drug addict. I was a prostitute. I was a manipulator, a liar, a thief. I was the kind of woman that other women cross the street to avoid. I'm not telling you that to shock you. I'm telling you that because if you're going to understand what happened to me, you need to understand where I was coming from. You need to understand the depth of the hole I was living in before you can understand what it felt like to be pulled out of it. I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in a house full of chaos and things a child should never have to carry. My parents were both addicts, not like occasional drinkers. Full-blown, every single day, nothing else matters addicts. They died in 2007, together. They made a decision to leave, and they made it on the same night. And I was the one who found them. Something inside me went very quiet in that moment, and then something else woke up in its place. Something angry. Something that decided if this world could do that to two people who were already suffering, then this world and I were going to have a serious problem. I became an atheist the same day I buried them. The only thing I had ever heard about God was conditional. Do this and you'll be loved. Be this and you'll be saved. And the only thing I knew about suicide was that the Bible says you go to a place called the pit if you kill yourself. And I thought, if believing in God means my parents suffered their whole lives and then got condemned to suffer forever on top of that, I want absolutely nothing to do with it. So I went deeper into the only world I knew, drugs. Not because I was careless, because pain has to go somewhere, and I didn't know any other place to put it. I was in it all the way by the time I was in my 20s. Heroin, crack. I was living on the street some nights, doing things to get money that I won't detail here. And I did things I am still making peace with. I got men I was with strung out because I thought if they needed the drug as much as I did, they would stay. One of those men died. He overdosed. And when he died, something cracked open in me. Not enough to make me stop, but enough to make a deal with myself. I said if I survive tonight, I'll go get help. I did survive. I tried. But it didn't stick. Nothing stuck. The years blurred together, and by March of 2019, I was barely a shadow walking around in the shape of a person. That's when it happened. I overdosed on March 23rd, 2019. I was alone. Whatever I took that night was too much, and I left my body. The first thing I experienced when I did was not peace, not light, not warmth. The first thing I experienced was every single thing I had ever done to another person. It came at me all at once. Every face, every woman I had manipulated, every person I had hurt. But it wasn't just visual memory. I felt what they felt. Whatever separates us from each other just wasn't there anymore. Their pain was my pain. Their fear was my fear. And there was so much of it. I thought I had died and gone to hell. I thought this is it, this is what I deserve, and this is where I'll be forever. I was drowning in it. I could see people around me who I recognized as dead. I saw my parents. And even though part of me knew I had to be hallucinating, another part of me knew with complete certainty that I was dead, that whatever was happening was real. And then I heard my father's voice. He was chanting this phrase over and over. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. I didn't believe it. I want to be honest about that. I heard those words and I did not believe them for a single second. But I trusted the sound. I trusted his voice the way you trust something that is wired into your body before you even know what trust means. And so I followed it. And that's when I moved into the light. There is no description adequate for what that was like. I've tried 100 times and I always fall short. It felt like every cell in my body had been shredded apart right before I got there. And then the moment I arrived, it was the opposite. Like being put back together at some level deeper than physical. It was reunion. It was the specific sensation of being completely safe for the first time. Not safe like your door is locked. Safe in some bone-deep, soul-level way I had never once experienced in my entire human life. My experience came across looking like a massive spinning disc, like that Gravitron carnival ride where you spin so fast you stick to the wall. I came through the side of it, and in the center was a column of white light. Thousands of other souls were all around me. And this light was telling us we were volunteers, that we were the bravest souls in the galaxy, that we had chosen to come to Earth for something it called the Great Awakening. I didn't know what that meant. I still don't fully. But I received it as truth in a way I have never received anything in my life. Not intellectually, not emotionally, in somewhere deeper than either. Then my awareness shifted, and I found myself in front of a table. An ordinary plastic folding table, the kind you'd rent for a backyard party. And sitting behind it were 4 beings of light. On the table, there was a beautiful, ornate book that I somehow knew was the book of my life. They looked up and said, "It's good to see you. This says you're not meant to stay. You're only here for information." I looked around and thought, absolutely not. I am not going anywhere. This place was the opposite of everything my life had been, and I was staying. But before I could argue, my awareness shifted again, and I was standing with a man in a plaid blazer and a fedora, which even in that state I thought was an interesting choice. He had an empty shopping cart in front of him, and he said, "Let's go pick your life." He took me down aisles like a supermarket, but the shelves were lined with enormous boxes, and each box held a life experience. And I knew the same way I'd known everything else in that place that I was choosing, that I was selecting what I would carry into my human life. And I went wild. I grabbed everything I could, including things that were incredibly heavy. Childhood sexual trauma, that was one of them. Poverty, addiction, grief so large it could swallow a person whole. The understanding that came with it was that I was choosing a particular family line because there were wounds running through it for generations, inherited pain that needed someone to step into it and break it. And I was that person. The soul version of me had said, "I'll go. I'll be the one to end it." My human mind still bumps up against that. How do you hold the idea that you chose something like what was done to you as a child? I don't have a clean answer. I only have what I received in that place. Every single thing I had spent my life feeling victimized by, I had chosen. Not because I deserved to suffer, but because some version of me that exists outside of time and pain understood something about growth that my human self can barely touch. In that moment, the shame fell off me. Not gradually, all at once, like something physical being removed. I went back to the table. I was on my knees. I said, "This is the information I have been looking for my whole life. Thank you. Everything makes sense now. But I am not going back to Earth." They said I had no choice. I transformed into a small child and said, "You don't tell us what it's actually like down there. It is so hard, so much harder than you let on." They said, "You say that every single time you come back from there, and you've been going back for a very long time." They told me the first part of my life had been boot camp, that nobody enjoys boot camp, but that the second part was going to be different, that there were soulmates waiting, teachers, a community, a mission that was mine. I told them I didn't trust them, but I went back anyway. I chose to return to the same body rather than start over from zero, because I could not face doing it from the beginning again. I came back into my body on the bathroom floor, sat up, shook my head, and thought, I was so high that I hallucinated all of that. That's crazy. And I got up and went right back to everything I had been doing before. I wish I could tell you I changed immediately, but the universe seemed done waiting because things started happening. All of my dealers stopped selling on the same day. 10 different men, none of whom knew each other, all with some version of the same story. I found God. I want to be a good father. I'm out. Click. Blocked. And I had a serious physical dependency to heroin. I went into withdrawal with nowhere to turn. And withdrawal is something I would not wish on anyone. It is physical agony layered on top of emotional agony, layered on top of spiritual agony, every hour, for days. I was welcoming death, and then I heard a voice. It told me I could ask for what I needed fixed. I said, take the addiction. Please, just take it. It told me to count backwards from 10. As I counted, I saw 2 small men in white lab coats, each carrying a little lawnmower, walking in opposite directions through every part of my mind. I felt heat moving through my head, starting at the crown, spreading down, and then a flash of white light. I was healed. I know how that sounds. I was instantaneously pulled out of 3 days of heroin withdrawal. Gone. Completely gone. I started screaming. I kept saying, I'm not worthy of this. I'm a crackhead. I've done terrible things. I don't even believe in God. Why me? And I heard them chanting again, you are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. I did not handle the weeks after that gracefully. I thought I had been specifically chosen, and I went out onto the streets of Brooklyn laying my hands on strangers and telling them I could heal them. Preaching to empty subway cars. I had no framework for what had happened, just this enormous experience with no container to hold it. Then one afternoon, I was on the train, and the car was completely empty, which in New York City in the middle of the day is almost impossible. A man walked in and sat directly across from me. He had a medallion around his neck from a 12-step fellowship. I heard something tell me that was my path. I asked if he was going to a meeting. He was. He took me with him. A few days later at a women's meeting, I walked in looking like everything I had been through. Missing teeth, scars all over my face and arms, looking like the war I had survived. A woman walked straight up to me and pulled me into a hug. I hadn't been touched with love in so long it made me flinch. But then she leaned in and whispered in my ear, you are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. The same words, out of a human mouth, in a church basement in Brooklyn, from a person who had no possible way of knowing she was completing a sentence that had started on the other side of everything. That was when I surrendered, not to a religion, not to a set of rules, to the possibility that I was worth more than what my life had been, that maybe those words were true. I went into inpatient treatment and stayed for 1.5 years. I had to learn how to be a person from the beginning, how to wake up sober, how to feel something without reaching for a way to make it stop. I found a book called A Course in Miracles, and it became one of the main tools I used to rebuild my mind. Not as doctrine, but as a way of reprogramming the stories I had been telling myself for 3 decades. My life now is something I could not have imagined from that bathroom floor. I have built a community. I have soulmates and teachers and people who know me and love me anyway. I do retreats. I meet with people in person and online. I have learned that I cannot do this alone, that I cannot see the dirt behind my own ear. I need other people to show me what I cannot see in myself. And every single morning, I make a choice. I choose to live like it matters. Not because I have it figured out. Not because there's some clean spiritual system that ties everything together neatly. But because on March 23rd, 2019, something showed me that I chose to be here. And if I chose to be here, then being here means something. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. I know that can sound like a bumper sticker, but I have heard it from a dead man's voice in a place I don't have words for. I have heard it from a column of light that I still can't explain. And I have heard it from a stranger in a church basement who had no idea she was part of something much larger than a hug. You are a miracle. Not in a vague, inspirational way, in the most literal sense. The odds against your existence are astronomical, and here you are. That has to mean something. Whatever it is that's been put inside of you was put there on purpose. Whatever you've survived, whatever you've done, whatever has been done to you, none of it is the final word on who you are or what you're capable of becoming. I know that to be true, not because I read it somewhere, because I went to the other side and I came back, and this is what I was sent here to say.